is worth your while to learn how to make cakes from scratch. You make a peak, it kind of stays, go around the edges just to tie things all in. Yeah, that's a really good cake. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and it is snowing outside and I'm in the house doing some baking, and today I'm going to make a carrot cake. And I'm going to show you how to do it. This is a unbelievably rich but easy carrot cake recipe. If you don't know how to make carrot cake, it's worth learning how. All you need is a couple carrots, right? This is probably the least healthy way to eat carrots, especially this recipe. This is not health food, okay? Just so people know. This is a dessert. If you want to blow people's socks off, this is the dessert to do it. So let's get started here. I got 2 cups of flour, all right? Now I'm going to add to that a teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of baking powder, all right? I'll put all the ingredients up on the screen there so you can see them. I'll also put them in the description box. And I'll probably put the directions and everything for this recipe on my Substack page. I normally do a recipe once a month, so look for that. At some point I'll have it up there. So teaspoon of baking soda, teaspoon of baking powder. We're basically going to mix all our dry first. Okay, we're going to mix the dry, then mix the wet, and then put them together. All right. So we got soda, powder. We need a calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and it calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, but I put a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. I think to like make things more punched up. And it calls for between 2 or 3 teaspoons of cinnamon. I put 3 in, no messing around, right? More spice is always better in my opinion. All right, so we got our salt, our nutmeg, baking powder, baking soda, and cinnamon. Okay, so that's all our dry. Now, the useful thing about doing this is that you can see how I've added, you know, all that nutmeg. I know that when all the flour is the same color, that the baking soda and the baking powder have been sufficiently worked into the dry, right? So the easiest way to do that is to just take a whisk and mix. You notice in all my videos I never use machines to do anything. It's not that I'm against that. It's just one more thing in my kitchen taking up space. And I don't find it really saves that much time. You know, if I baked all the time, I suppose. I normally make something, I make bread about once a week, and I make something sweet and desserty about once a week. Dry is all mixed, we'll put that over here. Everything I've used goes over here, right? Not used, used. Good system for not putting things in twice. You don't want to put salt in something twice. Okay, now let's mix up our wet. So I got, this recipe calls for 4 eggs, if you can believe that, right? So there's 1. Let's move this over so I got something to put them on. 4 eggs. This is rich, right? It calls for a lot. Everything that goes into this is a lot. Okay, 4 eggs. You're going to see. You're just not going to believe. This is not something you'd want to make on a weekly or even monthly basis. This is something for birthdays and special occasions. I'm using my YouTube channel as an excuse to make this. Otherwise, it would not be like, you know, middle of January, middle of February type thing to make. Okay, so I got my eggs there. I'm going to take them and, you know, whip them up a little bit. You know anything about whipping eggs? It's always easier to tilt the bowl a little bit. You don't know that, right? Going like this, it makes it seem to move around. You can actually do a better job of mixing them if you tilt your bowl. I got 2 kids I'm trying to teach how to cook, and that's when you realize, like, people don't, all the things people don't know about baking and cooking is when you teach a young person that doesn't know anything about that. All right, so those are our eggs. Now we got 2 cups of sugar, a lot of sugar, right? Not health food. 2 cups of sugar, mix that in. Boy, that looks good just like that. All right, we got that mixed in. Now I got 1.5 cups of vegetable oil. All right, so no messing around here. 1.5 cups of vegetable oil. I didn't mention earlier, I got the oven preheated to 360. That might be the right temperature for you. It depends on where you are relative to sea level. I'm pretty close to sea level. So if you're further above sea level, you might need to set your oven hotter than that. Okay, so now we mix the oil into the sugar and the egg, get that sort of, they don't seem to want to mix, so you have to mess with that a little bit. Get that as mixed in as you can. There we go, now it's starting to go in. So now I can sort of put some air into that, right? Slight circular motion. I find, you know, there's different guidelines for doing this, and if you have a machine, whatever, you might say use the mixer, an electric mixer. We have one of those. My wife uses it. I always use this here thing. I like the feel of it. I find that if I use this until my arm's exhausted, it's about the right amount. Usually like a 60 count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? Once I get to about 60, right, I think I've done enough. So I don't know if I'm there yet, but I can feel it on my arm, so I'm going to say I'm there. If I'm not at 60, I'm close to it. Okay, now get rid of this whisk because it's no use now. Now we're going to mix the flour. Well, actually, sorry, we're going to mix the flour in, and then we're going to mix the carrot. I got 2 cups of carrot here and 2 cups of flour, right? Let's get rid of that. The whisk just gets all gummed up with all these ingredients, so it's kind of pointless. So it's easier to incorporate the flour and everything that's in the flour into the, you know, the wet with the dry, just turning it over with a spoon. I got a sort of spoon slash spatula here. Now this is a, you know, there's a lot of cake shows on TV, and I noticed it would be like a competition show and they're making a cake and people taste it at the end, but it seems to be, the focus seems to be on how the cake looks. I mean, the judges will say, oh, that tastes good or that's creamy or whatever, but when you watch them making it, they're more focused on like, how do I make this look the right color or the right shape or whatever. And I think that's the last thing should be your concern. You know, I'm going to turn in this carrot, 2 cups of carrot. My son had a birthday party a little while ago, and for a variety of reasons I had to buy a cake, which I never do. It was just one of those things where we could not swing making a cake because of a number of conflicting events. So I, had to buy a cake, which, so anyway, I bought a chocolate cake, a very nice looking chocolate cake at a place that makes cakes. It was very expensive. And my son didn't like it, my daughter didn't like it, and from what I could tell, the kids at my son's birthday party really didn't like it either. And they didn't like it because it wasn't good. The icing didn't taste good, the cake didn't taste good. I'll put a link to a great recipe for chocolate cake at the end of this video where it's just delicious. Anyway, it is worth your while to learn how to make cakes from scratch. And if you make a cake from scratch and it doesn't taste good, it doesn't turn out right, there's 2 reasons that could be the case. You did something wrong, or the recipe was no good. There is a ridiculous number of recipes online, and you follow the recipe to the letter, and it turns out terrible. That's because the person that prepared the recipe, either you made some mistake, or the person that prepared the recipe doesn't know anything. It's a terrible recipe. Right? So, that's why sometimes, just because someone has a website or, an online cooking show or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean they know what the heck they're talking about, right? All right, so now I got a 9x12 pan. Now, there's lots of different kinds of pans you can cook a cake in, but I find when you use a 9x12, so I like the bundt pan as sort of the high cylindrical sort of cake. But when you use a big flat pan like this, 9 inches by 12 inches, cake cooks faster. It's easier to have success with these, right? It's just a good, if you're new to making cakes from scratch, I would try making them using this technique. A big pan, 9 by 12, greased pan. You don't need parchment paper, you don't need anything like that. I mean, you might need parchment paper or something like that if you want to lift it out and put it on a plate and present it like that. We're gonna eat this right out of the pan. This is like just a regular, non-special event cake, right? So, let's get her in there. It's all mixed up. And that didn't take long, right? I mean, the thing that took the longest was grating the carrot, which I did by hand using a old-fashioned knuckle buster carrot, you know, just a grater. You don't need the time it takes to get out a food processor to grate up carrots and then to clean it and all that messing around, I guarantee you if I was side by side with someone doing it that way, I'd have the carrots peeled and grated and processed way faster than someone messing around with something like that. All right, so there's all our carrot. Sadly, as much as I'd like to lick off that spoon, it's all in there. The other good thing about doing the cake in a big flat pan like this, aside from the fact that it cooks faster, is that it cools off faster because there's more surface area. And also because there's really only one dimension, at least when I eat it out of the pan, we only ice the top. So and sometimes you'll have a cake and it's just got so much icing, you're practically in a coma by the time you're done eating it. So with this here approach, I just ice the top, almost like brownies, right? And then it's not too much icing. It's sort of just the right amount where you get the texture of the cake, the flavor of the cake, and then you get that blast of rich, delicious, you know, the cream cheese icing that goes on a carrot cake. Anyway, we're going in the oven now. 360 for 35 minutes. We'll see you in 35 minutes. All right, so it's been 45 minutes. Let's pull her out and have a look and see what we got here. All right, so just have a dry toothpick, stick her in, for something like this, I put her in an angle around the center. There's nothing stuck to this. Basically, if it comes out wet, it's not done. If it comes out dry, it's done. This is saying done. Okay, so we're all done now. Now this needs to dry for at least an hour before we ice it. So I'll show you how to do the icing here. So I mean that time, 45 minutes, it might take a little bit more, a little bit less time depending on where you are. You make it a few times, you make little notes and you make little adjustments as you go along. Depends on the pan, depends on the depth of the pan, all that sort of stuff. You know, if there's, you know, if you have a smaller pan that's higher, it's going to take longer. If you have a flatter pan that's bigger, it's going to take less time, that sort of thing. So you adjust the times for your size of pan. This was a 9 by 12, took 45 minutes. All right, now let me show you how to make the icing for this. All right, so let's go here. I'm now always amazed at when people buy icing or, you know, things like that to ice a cake. The stuff you buy, it never tastes any good. It's always better to make your own. You're just going to have to trust me on that. So this is a dead easy icing recipe, and of course you add more, add less, depending on how much you need, how thick you like it, and you know how much of the cake you want to cover with the icing. I find, at least with my family, we don't like to go overboard with these things. We like it, but we don't like too much. So what I have here is half a cup of cream cheese and half a cup of butter, a little bit of vanilla, and some icing sugar. Okay. For me, like I have a dairy intolerance, so this is kind of like a fake butter, and this is a fake cream cheese. But the butter stuff, as the texture of butter, it really doesn't taste like anything. And the cream cheese actually tastes really close to cream cheese, in my opinion. Both my kids can have whatever they want. They say it's close enough. They don't mind having this at all. So anyway, use the real thing if that's what you can use. I put the cream cheese in the microwave for about 12 minutes, just so it'll behave a little bit better, right? Soften it up a little bit. If you have real butter, you want to do that too. Basically, it's a ratio of 2 to 1 cream cheese to butter. You can use all cream cheese in the icing, but it's arguable that it spreads better. It's easier to manipulate it on the cake if there's a little sort of ratio of cream cheese to butter, but I'll leave that up to you. Anyway, if you're using real butter, you're going to have to soften that up in the microwave a little bit too. You don't melt it, you just put it in until it gets soft, like it's been at room temperature, so it behaves a little bit better. All right, now, at this stage, to tell you the truth, I never know how much icing sugar I need. I basically I put the vanilla in. We're going to put about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit shy of that, but about a teaspoon of vanilla. You can tell I'm not using a measuring spoon here, but it's about a teaspoon of vanilla. Okay, so I'm going to take that with the fork, and I'm just going to combine. Let me bring the camera in here. All right, so I'm just going to combine those two things. Get them nicely worked in a little bit. All right, that's probably good right there. That's enough. Okay, now I'm going to add a cup of the icing sugar. What I'm going to do is add a cup, or sorry, this is a half a cup. Add half a cup of the icing sugar. See how that feels. Add a little more. That's definitely not stiff at all, right? Definitely need more. There's a certain texture we're going for here, where it's firm but workable. There's another half cup, so now we've got about a cup of icing sugar. I always find for a cake this size, I like an icing sugar recipe that uses about a cup and a half, which is I think what we'll land on. Maybe it'll end up being 2 cups of icing sugar. But once you start getting up to like 3, 4, 5, you can tell we're still quite a bit liquid here, right? So now we're going to go up to, this is the third half cup, so it's a cup and a half. I'll add that. See how that works? All right, that's still too wet. Should form a peak when you lift it. We'll go with another half cup. So now we're at 2 cups. I'm hoping this is where it stiffens. And actually, now I used a combination of cream cheese and butter. I like to do it with all cream cheese, but today I didn't have enough. So you just cut it with a fraction of butter. Okay, now that is starting to behave a little bit more, starting to feel right. Does it form a peak? Almost a peak. Now we're getting very close. Let me just mix it up a little bit because I still got a couple little bits. Notice I'm sifting it. I'm not doing any of that stuff. You can do all that if you want. They teach you that in baking class in home ec. I never sift anything. I find if you stir it enough, usually whatever little bits were going to be sifted will be fine if you just stir it enough. Anyway, we're close, but you can see when you lift it up, it tips over a little bit. You could get away with this. If I didn't have any more icing sugar, this would probably be fine. I'm going to put a 1/4 cup in. I want it just a little stiffer than that. And now remember, once you spread this on, let it sit for a little bit, put it in the fridge, that sort of thing, right? It'll get stiffer, right? Because it cools down, right? The cream cheese and the butter will stiffen up a little bit. So it's okay if it's a little bit, not stiff, because it'll thicken and harden. Remember, icing sugar is like a kind of sugar with starch in it, right? So it'll continue to thicken and become stiffer with time. I can feel good resistance. You can see how it's behaving, right? It's on the fork here now. It's not dripping off the fork. See how that's just hanging there, right? That's kind of, look, you can see like I can make a peak. I don't know how well that comes across. I can make a peak, kind of stays, right? This is enough. It really depends on what you're doing with your cake and how badly you want to decorate it and stuff like that, right? I just want a nice, tasty cream cheese icing on top of the cake. I don't care how it looks. I'm just going to spread this on like you're putting butter on toast practically, right? I can't do that right now. It's going to take a couple hours for the cake to cool off, right? But let's just give it a little taste. Oh man, that's good. All right, so in my opinion, that's close enough. I could go stiffer, but then it's harder to spread. This is fine for what I want. It's got the right taste, and it's firm enough. It'll stay in place, especially after it's cooled and after it's sit a little bit. So yeah, we'll see when the cake cools down. I'll put some icing on it, all right? All right, so we got things cooled down enough. I'm gonna throw the icing on here, just to show you how easy this is to do. Now, I'm not a cake decoration guy. You know, that's not my forte. It's more like, does it taste good? That sort of thing, right? How quickly can I make it? How quickly can I make a delicious cake that tastes good? That's all I'm interested in when it comes to decoration and the finer aspects of these things. I could care less. More like, is the icing good? Is the cake good? That's what I'm going for here, all right? I mean, it should look reasonably good, but I mean, we eat this right out of the pan. You notice I'm not taking it out of the pan. I'm not putting it on a special, platter, anything like that. It's more like, is the icing evenly distributed? Does every piece have equal amount of icing? Is it going to be good? And I got my own sort of, I spent a number of years in the trades doing painting. So I kind of, part of painting is a field they call drywalling or taping or mudding. There's different terms for it. Plastering. So I tend to approach icing a cake like I'm doing that. So I mean, that's good enough just as is, but if you want to, this knife here has got a serrated edge, so I could, if I wanted to, just put a little pizzazz into it just to make it look presentable. That's about as fancy as I get. Now I go around the edges. Go around the edges just to tie things all in. Oh, a little bit more there. Yeah. There's a perfectly serviceable weekday cake. Ready to go, right? All right, so I guess I have to take a piece. I have to try this cake. My wife's gonna come home and say, "What are you doing?" Well, I have to do this for the camera, right? So let me cut a slice of this out. Again, we just eat this right out of the pan like this, right? Everybody gets a slice. First slice is almost impossible to extract from the pan, but we'll do that. Let's see what we can pull off here. There we go. All right, pretty good. All right, so there's our texture, right? Not a big production. This isn't for a wedding. This isn't for, big occasion. It's just a simple cake. Good flavor, good texture, right? I suppose it's a good way to use up your carrots. Let's give her a shot. Yeah, that's a really good cake. Really good cake. So anyway, that's a simple cake, easy to do, no big deal. You can dress it up any way you want. You can pop that out of the pan. If you put parchment paper in there, you can pop it out of the pan, no problem. Put it on a fancy platter, ice the whole thing, put your sprinkles on it, do whatever you got to do, right? But I think this is, this is totally fine for, family and friends. It's not a big occasion. You don't have to go crazy, right? As long as it's got a good taste, good texture, that's enough. So anyway, that's how I do it. I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, have fun in your garden and have fun in your kitchen. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here, go to vessies.com to buy whatever you need for your garden this year. And use my coupon code GAVS23 to get free shipping as long as there's a pack of seeds in the order and there's no oversized items in the order. Check out the description box of this video for details. You can buy everything you need from Vessies. They have seeds, fruit bushes and trees, soil amendments, pest solutions, tools, clothing, and lots of other stuff too. So yeah, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here and they sell something you need, buy it from them using my coupon code, and happy gardening.